Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I should have known something was off the second Tyler asked for a jacket, even though it was 80 degrees outside. It was early August, and we were packed into this tiny lakefront chapel in Lincoln City, Oregon. Just close family and a handful of friends. My older brother, Mark, was marrying a woman named Sabrina. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, even more perfect backstory. Everyone smiled like this was some second chance love story. Everyone but me. And apparently, not Tyler either. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. My name's Amy Blake. I'm 42. I live in Salem, Oregon now, with my son. Used to be an IRS fraud analyst, but I burned out early and left that world behind. Or at least I tried. Sabrina looks stunning in the champagne-colored dress, hair twisted into some kind of braided knot that probably had a name. Mark, wearing the nicest suit I'd seen on him in 15 years, looked like he'd won the damn lottery. That was the hard part. He actually believed all this. The ceremony moved fast. No choir, no readings, just vows and silence. The pastor cleared his throat and said the line, "If anyone knows a reason why these two should not be joined in marriage." I glanced at the guests. Quiet, not even a cough. Then I saw a movement to my left. Tyler. He stood up slow but steady. He didn't look at me. Just stepped into the aisle, walked all the way down past rows of stunned faces, and stopped between the pastor and the couple. Mark's eyebrows pulled in. Sabrina tilted her head, smiling like maybe this was some joke. Tyler reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small, a digital voice recorder. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the wood floor. "Tyler!" But he was already pressing play. A woman's voice came through, clear, sharp, cold. "He's clueless. The closing papers are ready. We transfer the deeds Monday. I'll handle his sister if she digs too deep." The chapel went dead quiet. A few people gasped. I watched Sabrina's smile twitch, then harden. She let out a small laugh. "Okay, what is this? Some little prank?" I didn't answer. I slid my phone from my purse, hit the speed dial I'd set 3 days ago, and walked out the side door without a word. The wind coming off the lake hit my face, and I kept my voice low. "It's time." 10 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up in front of the chapel. 3 agents from the State Financial Crimes Bureau stepped out, plainclothes, badges ready. I walked back in just as the doors opened behind me. Sabrina turned around, saw them, and didn't even flinch. "Miss Parks," one of them said, voice firm, "we need you to come with us." She smiled, wide, teeth showing. "Guess I stayed too long." Then she reached for her clutch and walked toward them without a fight. The agents hadn't even walked her out yet when my mind went straight back to the beginning, to where all this started. It was 3 years ago, right after our mom died. Mark shut down, I mean completely. He stopped answering calls, barely showed up to the funeral. A few months later, he sold the house we grew up in, our childhood home in Albany, without even telling me until the paperwork was already signed. He moved into this rundown ranch on the edge of town. Overgrown yard, roof looked like it had survived a war, plumbing that whined like it hated its own job. I showed up once thinking I'd help him get settled, maybe clean out a few closets. But he just said, "It's fine, Amy, I've got it." That was Mark. Proud, stubborn, always working something with his hands when the inside stuff hurt too much. Sabrina showed up that summer during the annual neighborhood garden walk. You wouldn't think a guy like Mark would even attend something like that, but I guess being alone pushes you into weird places. She said she was from Vermont, claimed she used to be a landscape architect before her husband passed away, said she'd moved west for a change of scenery. Her hair was tied back in a low ponytail, plain linen shirt, old hiking boots, nothing flashy. No makeup, just tidy. She was soft-spoken, but not shy. She had that kind of warmth people trust immediately. Tyler liked her right away, and that kid doesn't like anyone. I remember her kneeling next to him while he played in Mark's yard with a stick and a mason jar, pointing out weeds and letting him help her pull them. It was all very casual, very neighborly, but then she kept showing up. One day she was just in the area, the next she was bringing lunch, then suddenly she was organizing block parties and dragging Mark out to community brainstorms for traffic control or garden boxes or God knows what. He needed someone, and she played the part perfectly. Too perfectly. I didn't get suspicious until about 6 months in, during Thanksgiving. It was just the 3 of us, Mark, Tyler, and me. She showed up later with some roasted squash dish that tasted like cardboard, but looked like it belonged in a magazine. She pulled me aside at one point and said, "That necklace you're wearing, it's beautiful. Almost Georgian in detail. You've got a good eye." Then she pointed out this small potted shrub on Mark's windowsill and said, "You know, I once used something similar in a garden flat back in London. Adds vertical interest." Garden flat. Nobody around here says garden flat unless they're watching BBC shows on repeat. That's a British term, and landscape architects don't usually talk like that, even if they've studied abroad. You'd say raised bed or terraced entry, not garden flat. It hit me all at once. Too fast, too specific, too rehearsed. But I didn't say a word. I smiled, said thank you. Then I started watching her more closely. And after that, nothing. She didn't make another mistake. She was flawless. Sabrina always brought the right dish, always remembered names, never bragged, never got defensive, always generous without being showy. She baked. She volunteered. She once bought handmade toys from a local artist and gave them out anonymously at a school fundraiser. I tried to trip her up, asked about her Vermont credentials, tossed around zoning codes and municipal licensing rules I knew from my old job. But she always danced around with just enough vagueness to make it seem like I was the rude one for asking. That's the worst kind of liar, the kind who never actually lies out loud, just hides behind perfect smiles and empty details. I didn't have anything solid, just gut. Mark was happier than I'd seen him in years. He shaved, started jogging again, even tucked in his shirt once. And me? I was the one standing in the corner, picking at invisible threads, waiting for the whole thing to unravel. But when someone's running a long con, they don't slip on the big stuff. They trip on the details. And she had just given me my first one. I wanted to believe my brother had finally found someone who made him feel seen again. That maybe, after everything, losing mom, the divorce, the years of just drifting, he was allowed a little happiness. And for a while, I let myself lean into that story. Mark smiled more. He stopped wearing paint-splattered t-shirts every day and started ironing button-ups. He even bought new sneakers and started jogging. He hated jogging. But he'd go every morning, like some born-again version of himself. Sabrina would be there with a protein smoothie when he got back, like clockwork. I watched it happen, and I'll admit, I got quiet about my suspicions. I thought, maybe I was just jaded. Maybe this woman just fit into our lives better than I expected. But then Tyler started talking. He was 11, observant in a way that didn't draw attention. One night he said, "She watches stuff." Like, really watches. When people leave, what they say, even what brand of chips I eat. And she asked weird questions. I asked what kind of questions. He shrugged. Like, if Uncle Mark's house is fully paid off or if it has a mortgage. And she called the mailbox a postbox. That's not normal, right? Postbox. There it was again. I told him to just stay polite and let me handle it. But I couldn't ignore the itch anymore. It was back and stronger. I still remember the exact moment it flipped from suspicion to confirmation. We were sitting at Mark's table, just the four of us, eating grilled chicken and roasted carrots. Nothing fancy. Tyler was talking about his science project. I was half listening. Sabrina was pouring wine. Then she said casually, "Amy, with your background in fraud investigation, I'm sure this kind of thing just jumps out at you." I froze. I never told her about my old job. Not once. I hadn't spoken about it in front of her either. Not directly, not even in passing. Mark smiled and said something like, "Yeah, Amy used to be a bloodhound for the IRS." I laughed like it was nothing. But inside, everything locked up. That night, after Tyler went to bed, I opened my laptop and started digging. First stop was her LLC, the landscaping business she claimed to run. I pulled the registration off the state website. It was legit on paper. Filed, current, clean. But the office address listed was in Ashland. I looked it up. Nothing there but a UPS drop box inside a strip mall. So I kept going. Found 2 more LLCs tied to her name, or versions of her name. Sabrina Parks, SLE. Parks, and one listed under S. Landon. That one was based out of Wilmington, Delaware, with a mailing address in the Cayman Islands. Cayman, of course. The LLCs had almost no activity, just enough to stay open. No invoices, no staff, no contracts I could track. Ghost entities. I didn't say anything to Mark. Not yet. I knew him. He'd get defensive. He'd say I was jealous or paranoid or projecting old job habits onto something harmless. That's how it always went. Me asking too many questions, him shutting the door before I finished the first one. So I waited and I watched. Every little detail she gave me, I took apart. Every smile, every word, every shift in tone. I wasn't just Amy anymore. I was back in analyst mode, quiet, sharp, surgical, and what I started to see, it wasn't love. It was a setup. I didn't have to break into anything. Mark left his life out in the open like he always did. Drawers half closed, files in a basket on the kitchen counter, passwords scribbled in pencil on the inside of a recipe book, like no one would think to look there. It started with the insurance policy. I was helping him find a missing receipt for a water heater repair when I saw it. His homeowner's policy, folded in thirds like junk mail, sitting under a stack of coupons. I scanned the page, not really expecting anything. Then I saw the update line, dated 3 weeks ago. A name added, Sabrina Parks, co-beneficiary. I froze. Mark didn't have kids. No ex still in the picture. He had one sibling, me. That policy used to have me listed in case of emergencies. Not anymore. I tucked it back exactly how I found it. Didn't say a word. A couple days later, I offered to help him organize his documents for a refi he mentioned in passing. He grumbled, but let me poke through a drawer where he kept his legal stuff. That's where I found the copy of the will. It looked freshly printed. The signature page was neat, no coffee stains or creases. There was a note paperclipped to the front. Updated per referral from Tom's contact. S suggested we use him. Fast and affordable. Tom was one of Sabrina's gardening buddies, some retired guy who built birdhouses and talked about soil like it had a soul. The will itself? Sabrina was named the primary heir. Property, cash, tools, everything. I searched the lawyer's name and office listed on the cover sheet. Nothing came up. No license in the Oregon Bar Directory. No office in the building he supposedly worked out of in Portland. Fake. She wasn't even trying to be clever. Just fast. That's when I started checking Mark's bank statements. He had one account, local credit union, easy to access if you had the login, which I'd helped him reset a few months back when he forgot his security questions. The withdrawals were small, just under $3,000 each, spread out, clean numbers. Most people wouldn't notice, but there were 10 of them, all within 8 weeks, always from ATMs near places Sabrina claimed to have errands. That kind of pattern wasn't random. I didn't ask Mark about it. I didn't drop hints, because I knew how this story would go. He'd nod, smile, and then run straight to her with whatever I'd said, and by dinner she'd have a tearful speech about betrayal and how she could never feel safe in this family. She was good at that, weaponizing vulnerability. So instead, I watched. And Tyler did too. He started picking up on her little routines. She goes out to the garden every day at the same time. He told me one afternoon, flipping through a notebook he'd started. 4 o'clock, almost exact. She talks on the phone but walks around like she's just checking plants. I asked what she said. Stuff about parcels and deeds and easements, whatever that is. One time she said, they'll never check the side lot line if the property ID doesn't match. That's not gardening. No, it wasn't. That was real estate fraud lingo. That was someone who knew how to play the zoning game, slip ownership transfers through without triggering red flags. And the way she talked, it was fast, coded, confident. I went back to her LLC paperwork and started checking affiliate records, public filings, matching addresses. The same P.O. boxes popped up over and over, tied to different shell company names. Every line I traced came back empty, but all of them led to the same style. No fingerprints, no history, all fake fronts with just enough real info to pass a casual glance. And Mark? He kept smiling, jogging, letting her buy fancy dish towels and talk about vegetable gardens she had no intention of planting. He was already in too deep. I was in the kitchen scraping dried cheese off a baking sheet when Tyler came in, eyes wide, breathing through his nose like he'd just run a mile. I found something, he said, low but urgent. I didn't look up. What now? In the study, top drawer, there's a recorder, with her sketchbooks that made me stop. Mark never kept anything in order. But that drawer was different. That's where he kept the stuff she gave him, her design sketches, as she called them, pages of leafy scribbles and made-up plant names. I'd flipped through one once and laughed. She's a fraud, I'd muttered. Tyler must have remembered. He pulled the recorder from his hoodie pocket and held it up like it was a live wire. I didn't hit play yet, he said. Didn't want to mess it up. I dried my hands and nodded for him to follow me. We went into the guest room, shut the door, and sat on the floor with our backs against the bed. I held the recorder. My thumb hovered over the play button for a second longer than I expected. "You sure it was just sitting there?" I asked, half buried under her sketch pad. It wasn't locked or anything. I hit play. The audio clicked on. Low static, then a woman's voice, muffled but clear. Her tone was sharp, fast, no hesitation. "Closing papers are in place. The title transfers Monday. After the vows, I'm golden. He won't question it. Amy's nosing around, but I'll handle her. I've done it before." I pressed stop. We sat there in silence. "That's her," Tyler said. I nodded. I knew the voice too well by now. That smooth, even tone she used when she thought she had control of a room. Or a person. He leaned forward. "We gotta show Uncle Mark." "Not yet." He blinked. "Why not?" "Because this isn't enough. It's suggestive, not evidence. No dates. No names of properties. It won't hold." His face tightened. "But she said your name. She said she'll handle you." "What does that mean?" "It means she's getting sloppy," I said. "But sloppiness isn't a crime." He grabbed the recorder and hit play again, fast-forwarding a bit. More noise, then her again, bragging about asset flips, shell contracts, someplace called Oak Ridge. She was walking while she talked, probably outside, birds in the background, faint crunch of gravel. "She's talking about a property scam," he said. "This is enough." I shook my head. "It's not. The Bureau won't move unless we have hard links. Deed numbers, money trails, aliases. And your uncle? He won't believe it unless she's wearing an orange jumpsuit." He leaned back against the bed again, frustrated. "So we just wait? Let her marry him?" "No," I said. "We watch. We collect. We make it impossible for her to explain away." He crossed his arms. "I hate this." "Me too." He stared at the ceiling. "What if we wait too long?" I didn't answer right away, because I'd been thinking the same thing for weeks. What if we missed the window? What if she cleaned out his accounts and vanished to Belize the day after the wedding? But I had a hunch, and instincts were the one thing I never second-guessed. "She's not running yet," I said. "She's close, but she thinks she's winning. That's when people make mistakes." He exhaled through his nose. "Fine, but the second she slips, I'll know," I said. "And so will you." I picked up the recorder, rewound it, then slipped it back into a manila envelope. I labeled it with a Sharpie, "For Monday." Tyler didn't ask what that meant. He just stood up, walked out, and closed the door behind him. I stored the recorder under the loose floorboard in my closet. Mark would never find it, and I doubted Sabrina would even step foot in my house again before the wedding. She had everything she wanted where she was, just counting down the days. That week, I shifted into full analyst mode. Tyler and I started keeping time-stamped logs. Nothing fancy, just a worn legal pad we hid behind the cereal boxes in the pantry. Every day after Sabrina's garden walks or errand runs, we wrote down what we saw, what we heard, and what didn't add up. Tyler took notes like a pro. Exact times, what direction she was facing, how long the calls lasted. One afternoon he wrote 4:06 p.m. Sabrina on phone near Rose Trellis. Said, "Once we've got the house, I'm done playing fiancé." When he showed me the line, he looked up like he was waiting for me to flip the table. Instead, I just nodded and said, "Good work. Keep listening." The truth is, that sentence didn't shock me. It confirmed what I already knew. She was running a script. She always had a timeline. She just thought no one was watching. I didn't sleep much that week. Every night I stayed up reading through old case files and cross-checking aliases. Sabrina Parks was a ghost online, but parts of her stories slipped through. Town names that didn't line up, phone numbers registered out of Florida, one LLC that matched a fraudulent landscaping business in Spokane that went belly up after some poor guy's house got seized in a deed dispute. That's when I called in a favor. I hadn't talked to Liz Warner in almost 4 years, but she picked up on the second ring. She still worked at the Bureau of Property Crimes in Salem. We weren't exactly friends, but we'd covered each other's blind spots back when we were both crawling through federal spreadsheets. "Got a name I need checked," I said. "Go ahead." I gave her Sabrina's full name. She was quiet for a second. "Hold on," she said, and put me on mute. 2 minutes later, she was back. "You sure that's the name she's using?" "Yes." "Well, it's not hers. Legal name's Vanessa Lynn Parks." That one rang. She's flagged in 2 states, Oregon and Idaho. Property fraud, fake real estate filings, forged power of attorney documents. Nothing major enough to pull in the feds, but enough to land her in county for a long time. My stomach sank, but not from shock. It was the weight of knowing I'd been right the whole time, that I hadn't just imagined the cracks. "She's marrying my brother in 3 days," I said. "You want me to open a file?" "Not yet." I hung up and didn't tell Tyler what I'd found until the next morning. He was eating dry cereal out of the box, pacing around the living room like a dog that heard thunder. "She's not Sabrina," I said. "Her real name's Vanessa Parks. She's already wanted. This is just her next hit." He stopped mid-chew. "So we stop it now, right?" I shook my head. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because what we have right now is strong, but it's not enough to trigger an arrest at a wedding in front of witnesses. If we go early and blow it, she vanishes." His jaw clenched. "Then what are we doing this for?" I walked over, took the box out of his hand, and set it on the counter. "We're doing it for the moment she tries to finish the job. When she signs something, moves money, finalizes a transfer, that's when it becomes evidence. That's when they'll take her seriously." He didn't look convinced. I leaned in. "When the time comes, you'll know. And so will I." Tyler didn't say anything else. He just nodded once and picked the cereal back up like he needed something to bite down on. Tyler moved before I did. I'd had my hand halfway into my purse, fingers brushing the edge of my phone, when he stood up. No hesitation, no glance back at me. He just rose, walked steady down the aisle, and pulled the recorder from his pocket like he was reaching for a pen. He didn't flinch. He didn't ask. He pressed play. The pastor had just finished the line, "If anyone knows a reason these two should not be joined," when the static hit the speakers. Then her voice came through, crisp and direct. "He's clueless. The closing papers are ready. We transfer the deeds Monday. I'll handle his sister if she digs too deep." It didn't sound like a prank. It didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like someone who'd already won. A few people gasped. One of Sabrina's friends in the front row covered her mouth. Mark didn't move at all. He just stared at Tyler like he'd turned into a stranger. Sabrina's smile twitched, then settled back into place like it had muscle memory. "Oh, wow," she said with a little laugh. "That's... okay. I don't know what this is, but honestly, it's kind of funny. Where'd you get that, kiddo? TikTok?" Nobody laughed with her. I stood up slowly, keeping my face still. I didn't look at Mark. I didn't look at Tyler. I just slipped out my phone and stepped backward toward the aisle. My thumb found the contact I'd saved under Civic League 2 days earlier. I hit call, said nothing, and hung up after 2 rings. Sabrina's face barely flickered. Mark finally blinked. "Amy?" he asked, voice low. "What the hell is this?" I said nothing. "Is this some kind of stunt? Are you trying to ruin this?" Still nothing. I wasn't going to argue with him. Not here. Not in front of people who already didn't know what to do with their hands. The pastor looked like he wanted to vanish. Sabrina stepped forward, arms open slightly. "Look, I think we've all had enough surprises for one day. Clearly someone misunderstood something." Tyler cut her off. "You said it. We recorded it. You lied." She looked at him, then me, and finally, I saw it. The flicker. The drop in her eyes. Just a half second too long to be casual. Her hands moved back to her sides. Then she nodded once, slow, like she'd accepted something. 10 minutes passed like fog. Nobody left, nobody spoke. The recorder sat on the altar, still, silent. Tyler didn't sit down. Then the doors opened. 3 plainclothes agents entered side by side. No guns drawn, no drama. Just badges, firm steps, and clipped voices. The lead agent glanced around, spotted Sabrina, and said, "Miss Parks." She turned. "We need you to come with us." No resistance, no panic, just that smile again. "I figured you might," she said. "Guess I stayed too long." She reached for her clutch, then paused, probably debating whether she could keep the performance going. Then she walked toward them like she was stepping onto a red carpet. Mark looked like someone had unplugged him, face pale, lips parted, hands limp at his sides. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched as the woman he almost married walked out of the chapel and into the arms of the State Bureau. The guests sat frozen. Some turned toward me. One of Sabrina's cousins muttered something under her breath. "This is disgusting." But I didn't care enough to ask who she meant. The door closed behind the agents. That's when I finally exhaled. Tyler looked up at me. "I wasn't supposed to do it first," he said. I shook my head. "Number. But you did it right." He didn't smile. He didn't even blink. just stared at the empty aisle where she'd stood a few minutes earlier. Mark sat down on the edge of the pew like someone had cut his strings. I walked over and put the recorder back in my purse. He finally looked at me. His voice cracked. "How long did you know?" I met his eyes. "Long enough." The chapel emptied fast after they took her. Some guests left without looking back. Others stayed behind just long enough to whisper and stare, most pretending to check their phones. Someone clapped Tyler on the back as they passed, said, "Good job, kid," like it was some school project. Others weren't so kind. One of Sabrina's friends sneered at me near the aisle. "You ambushed her. That was disgusting." I didn't answer. She didn't deserve one. Mark hadn't moved since sitting down, still at the edge of the pew, staring at nothing, jaw tight, like his whole face was trying to stay in place. I waited until we were the last three in the room, me, him, and Tyler. The pastor had disappeared. I half expected him to turn off the lights and lock us in. Mark finally spoke. "How long?" "Since Thanksgiving," I said. He blinked, slow. "That long?" "Longer, really. I noticed things before that. She wasn't who she said she was. I started watching." He rubbed a hand over his face, voice low. "And you didn't tell me." I sat down across from him. "No." "Why?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me." He looked up. There was no fight in his face, no anger, just pain. "You're probably right." "I am," I said, because I wasn't going to pretend now. "You were happy, and she was good at selling it." He nodded, then dropped his head into his hands. "God, I was such an idiot." "No, you weren't. She's been running this game for years. You were just next." Tyler stood by the door, quiet, arms crossed. He hadn't said a word since Sabrina was taken out. Mark noticed and motioned him over. "Hey, buddy." Tyler hesitated, then walked over slow, like he expected to get yelled at. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." "For what?" Mark asked. "For ruining your wedding?" Mark pulled him in without saying anything. Just hugged him tight, both hands on his back. It broke something in me to watch it, because I knew how scared Tyler had been that this moment would go the other way. "You didn't ruin anything," I said. "You stopped a robbery." Tyler looked at me, unsure. "She wasn't going to stay married," I said. "She was going to take the house, drain his accounts, and disappear. You gave him his life back." Mark let go and sat back with a heavy exhale. "It's just, I don't get it. I thought she cared. She did so much. Helped me fix the place up, made it feel like home again. I let her into everything." "That was the con," I said. "She gave you the version of her you needed. That's how people like her work." He shook his head. "How did I not see it?" "You weren't looking, and she made sure of that." Tyler shifted on his feet. "She said stuff about the house, legal stuff like easements and deeds. I didn't know what it meant, but it felt wrong." "You were right," I told him. "You saw her clearer than most adults would have." Mark stood up slowly, like his joints had aged 10 years in one afternoon. "I don't know what happens now." "We figure it out," I said. "One step at a time." He looked around the empty chapel like he was searching for something to hold onto. Then he walked toward the doors without saying anything else. Tyler followed. I stayed back one last second, took one long look at the altar where she almost got away with it, and then turned out the lights. 2 weeks later, Mark rolled up the gravel drive in his old pickup with everything he owned shoved in the back. He didn't say much, just nodded toward the guest house behind mine and said, "This'll do." Then he unloaded one box at a time, like if he moved slow enough, the whole thing might feel less real. The place wasn't fancy. 2 rooms, thin walls, a busted heater I hadn't gotten around to fixing. But it was his. And after everything, that mattered more than comfort. I kept my distance the first couple days. Just left meals on his porch, waved if we passed in the yard. He wasn't ready to talk. I got that. Tyler, though, he needed something different. He stopped asking if he did the right thing, stopped pacing the hall at night, stopped checking the door lock twice before bed. He slept heavier. He laughed more. I caught him once building some goofy cardboard trap outside for imaginary intruders, booby traps and twine and bells tied to plastic forks. I didn't say a word, just watched him, let him be a kid again. By the end of that first week, he was spending afternoons in the library corner of my office, flipping through legal books I'd saved from my IRS days. "Can I highlight this?" he asked, pen already uncapped. "Only if you know what it means." He grinned and started reading aloud. fraudulent conveyance, intentional misrepresentation, shell entities. He was soaking it up like oxygen, every term, every trick. At night, we'd talk about it over dinner. I'd explain what I knew, not in theory, but in practice. How people hide things, how patterns always show up if you know where to look. One night, he asked, "Did you ever feel bad digging into people's lives like that?" I thought about it, only when I was too late. Mark didn't come over until the third Sunday morning. I was on the porch with coffee, still in my sweatshirt. He just walked up and sat down next to me, no greeting. "I should have listened to you," he said. I let that sit for a second. "Yeah, you should have." He gave a dry little laugh. "Guess I earned that." We sat there a while, not talking, just watching squirrels tear through the flower bed like they owned the place. "I thought I needed to be saved," he said, and she showed up with a blueprint for it. "You needed time," she rushed it. "She built me a fantasy," he said, and I let her. "You're not the first. You won't be the last." He nodded, then looked toward the road. "I've been thinking maybe I should talk about it to people, so it doesn't happen to someone else." "You mean like a podcast?" I asked. He smirked. "More like church basements and senior centers, nothing flashy. Could be a good start." That Friday, he went to the local rec center and gave a 15-minute talk about spotting real estate scams. Tyler and I sat in the back. He stuttered once, lost his train of thought, but kept going. He even stayed after to answer questions. That night, Tyler handed him a book on property law and said, "You'll need this if you're gonna do more." Mark took it like it weighed 20 pounds. Maybe it did, but he held on to it. Word count, 503, within 475 to 525 range. We came back to the lake 1 year later. Same spot, same crooked little dock. The chapel was still there, still pretending it hadn't hosted a train wreck in formal wear. But this time, we stayed outside, just the three of us, me, Mark, and Tyler, sitting on a worn-out quilt with a grocery store picnic and thermoses of lemonade. Tyler was by the shore, stacking flat rocks into a wobbly tower. He'd gotten taller. His voice had dropped an inch. But he was still just a kid, throwing stones and pretending it didn't matter how much had changed. Mark sat beside me, leaning back on his elbows, sunglasses on. His hair was longer now, grayer. He looked tired, but not hollow. "Looks different?" he said. "No, it doesn't," I replied. He smirked. "Yeah, I guess we do." Tyler wandered back over, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Do you regret it?" he asked out of nowhere. I looked at him. "Regret what?" "Waiting, not saying anything sooner." I didn't answer right away. I looked out over the water, the sunlight catching the ripples, the wind soft but steady. Then I said it straight. "Justice isn't just about being first. It's about being sure." He nodded, chewing on that, then went back to stacking. The letter came 3 weeks before, an official envelope from Interpol addressed to me. Inside was a typed note. "Vanessa Parks, 7 counts of fraud, 12-year sentence. Thank you for your cooperation. I didn't frame it for pride. I framed it for memory. It's in my office now, behind glass, not because I needed to prove I was right, but because it reminded me that sometimes the most powerful act is waiting in silence, watching, knowing, choosing your moment." Mark still gave talks at the rec center once a month. Tyler still read fraud case studies like comic books. And me, I was learning how to let things go when they were over and hold on to the ones that mattered. We sat there a while longer, not saying much, just listening to the water and the occasional plunk of a rock slipping from Tyler's hand. Together, whole, still standing.